Why my journal is my best friend. This may sound a little bit like a joke, but it's kind of not. My journal, I would say, is my absolute best tool for emotion management that I have ever found. It is the greatest mood stabilizer that I have ever found. And this episode is not to say or put forth the opinion that every single person in the world needs to be journaling. I don't think that. I think if it's something that you enjoy doing, then you lean into that as much as it's fun for you. And if it's something that is stressing you out, maybe it's not the right activity for you, or maybe there are things that are worth understanding about journaling itself before you decide if it is right for you or not. And so that's kind of what I wanted to explain, was really what are the technical pieces around why my journal is such a powerful tool for emotion management in my world. I think the first thing I want to say is it absolutely forces that you slow your mind. You have to, because the mind is moving so much faster than your hand can physically write something on a page, can like physically write down a word or a sentence or even like a story. I mean, that is the most powerful piece of why journaling actually works, because you cannot do it and stay in that super anxious frequency. You actually have to come into body and slow your frequency down into body and slow it down to where you can write it on the page. So in that sense, it's absolutely magical. Like, just to write down whatever's going on inside of you. And even the fact that you slowed it down will be productive. You'll have a greater clarity on it. You'll be able to see it more clearly. You'll be able to see it well enough and like actually stop it on the page so that you can like get other ideas or get other perspectives onto it. So even just the act of slowing it down is super powerful. Also, like we said, when it's stopped, when you stop those thoughts on the page and you can look at them, it's an easier time to get to what I call the observation deck, where you can be in powerful emotion, even negative emotion, and you're not underneath the waves of it. You're writing it on the page. You're telling what's happening inside of you. You're observing, you're being the witness to this energy, and you're describing it on the page, kind of like a reporter. And in the act of doing that, again, you can have a greater level of detachment, the observation deck, where you're up above looking at what's going on. You have a greater level of detachment, which means you have a greater chance at understanding, all emotions are messages, and every single one of them that comes has something for you, has a message to tell you and for you to absorb. That's why the emotion is there. So in separating from it, I feel like you have a greater chance of receiving the message that it's trying to deliver, as opposed to when you stay under the current of the emotion and you're just getting beat to hell by the tide or whatever. It's like so much easier at that point to identify as the emotion, not I have anger running through me, but I am anger. I am angry. It's like, no, you're not. Like, you're not anger. You have anger. Anger is visiting you right now, right? Like, you aren't joy. Joy is with you right now. So there's like that detachment from the emotion itself is super productive, and journaling is how I do that. I write it on the page so I can get a little bit of detachment. One of the other things that I think about journaling, that this has been my experience, I would love to hear from you if you're a like a longtime journaler and you feel the same, or if you have dabbled in journaling and if this isn't what is so frustrating about it. But I feel like journaling is like exposure therapy for healing perfectionism. Like, it's impossible to remain a perfectionist and journal on a regular basis. You kind of got to get over it. And I think it's like so powerful for just letting yourself be. Like, I wrote down too, like, it's a great place to practice your authenticity, as in, like, you're not trying to edit yourself, you're not trying to make it sound a certain way, you're just writing down what's true, writing down what's real. That's all. And if that means that you're telling a story and you're going along and all of a sudden, like, you don't even care about writing down the rest of the story because you really, like, you got this whole new perspective, this whole new idea, these two dots just connected in your brain, and you need to write down, like, what just happened, like freaking skip the rest of the story and go to the thing that's real and true in the moment right now. Like, if your brain jumps, the journaling can jump. If you misspell a word, if you feel the need to correct it, scratch it out and write the right one. Or just leave it misspelled. That's like, in the early days, I would scratch it out and like correct it, because I would never want anybody reading this thinking that I made a spelling error. Now I just like, I don't even think about it. I'm pretty sure, like, I don't know how to do the I before E except after like E, I, E, I don't know. And so I just do what I think and like move on with my life. I used to like would look up how to spell words so that I could write it down correctly. And now again, like, I'll just abbreviate it if I really don't know how to spell it, because again, it's like not even the point. Like, having it written out on the page is not the point. Slowing your brain down is the first main point, and healing from perfectionism is the second main point as far as how I use this tool. If you want to dabble into like law of attraction terminology, journaling is also a very powerful tool for manifesting. And the reason, again, is because the brain has to slow down. So you're holding on to one specific thought for longer. And like, if you subscribe to like Abraham Hicks terminology, she says, and I don't know where she gets this from, this is her own intuitive understanding of how it works, and I feel like I've sat with it enough to see this play out in my own life. But like, she talks about momentum of thought. And like, when you're in your brain and you're jumping between a million different thoughts to where it's just a mess in there, it's just cluttered up and like you can't even think straight. It's like you're holding each of those thoughts for maybe like a second or maybe even less. And so at that point, you're like adding one teensy millimeter of momentum to this thought, and then you're jumping over here to this thought and giving it a teensy bit of momentum, and then you're jumping over here to this thought and giving it a teensy bit of momentum. Bing, bang, boom, bam, bing, gang, 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 and it just keeps going. And like, that's what she calls split energy. So when you're giving a teensy bit of momentum to a million different things, you're taking your very precious life force energy and you're dividing it down to a point where it's lost basically all of its potency. And when you journal, you have to stay on the thought. Like, when you write down, like, this is making my mind slow. This is slowing my mind. Like, I can say it even way faster than I would be able to write it down. So maybe writing down the thought, instead of spending half a second on it when it's only in your brain, when you write it down, maybe you're spending 10 seconds or 15 seconds. Maybe you intentionally write down the same thought over and over and over and over again just because you want to stay on the subject. I've done that a lot. Like, I'll write a whole page that says, I am so easy to love. 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 And as I write that and write that and write that and write that, I'll spend several minutes on that thought. And now I've taken my life force and I didn't scatter it anywhere. I put it right where I wanted it to go. I added my momentum on purpose, right where I wanted it to go. I am so easy to love. Everything is always working out for me. I've written pages, hundreds of pages probably, with the thought, everything is always working out for me. 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 It's like an investment. Would you rather put 1 penny into 1,000,000 different bank accounts? Or would you rather invest $1 million into one bank account? Which one of those is more powerful? This is the idea of momentum. And when you slow your brain down to the point where you can hold thoughts on purpose because that's how I want to feel, this is the truth that I want, is I am so easy to love. Sometimes I believe that, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I still forget my lovability, but a lot of times I remember it, and the reason is because I've practiced the thought a lot that I am easy to love. I am easy to love. I am easy to love. I want that to be my reality, so I practice it on purpose. I spend my life force energy building that reality for myself by holding the thought. I am so easy to love. And as I do that, as I sit with it, I'll see like different flashes in my brain of like different people smiling at me, or like they're giving me hugs, or they're excited to see me, or they're laughing at my jokes, or like I'll get these images. And so like as I just stay on the thought, I am so easy to love, it's like that's momentum. That's where she says like if you can hold a thought for 17 seconds, another thought will join it, another thought that's like that thought. So I am so easy to love. When I hold it for 17 seconds, it's like I get an image in my mind of someone loving me. And when I hold the thought for 68 seconds, you're now moving external pieces in the universe to move towards you, to move in your direction as a cooperative component. Like basically what she says about like manifesting, it's like you don't go over there where the thing you want is. You, where you are, become a match to the thing that you want, and the thing that you want comes to you. And that's the part where like I feel like I personally believe that because I've seen it play out for myself so many times. Like as I started practicing my lovability, my deservability, my worthiness in my journal on purpose, holding pure positive thought on purpose and pointing it at myself on purpose, doing that for 6 years, I live in a whole other universe now compared to where I did back then. And so much of that is because of journaling, because of my best friend Journal, my BFF. And that's again where I want to end maybe with the best friend part is like, I was listening to a Matt Kahn video earlier where he was talking about apathy and the sensation of feeling nothing, of caring about nothing, being apathetic, like is basically lifeless and empty. It's very uncomfortable. And I mean, it was a long session and he explained so many magical things about apathy, but one of the main ones that stands out here is like apathy is a process, and that the process of apathy is actually where we face our own reservoirs of loneliness. And by swimming in those reservoirs of loneliness, confronting them, facing them, making friends with them, that apathy is where we transform loneliness into solitude. Solitude is a very different thing from loneliness. And both states are available to someone who is by themselves or with people. Other people have very little to do with whether or not you feel like you're in loneliness or solitude. And I feel like my loneliness, like where I faced that, was in the pages of my journal. I didn't need another person to comfort me because I learned how to comfort myself in my journal. When I'm feeling upset, when I'm feeling negative emotion, I don't pick up the phone, I pick up my journal. When I feel bad, I mostly energetically quarantine myself with my journal to see if I can unravel it or budge it on my own just by witnessing like what even is going on inside of myself, just kind of sitting in that, like going to the observation deck and like writing about what's happening. And I'm very fortunate that I do have people in my support system. I do have friends where there are absolutely times where I can't budget as much as I wish I could, and an outside perspective, literally outside of myself, is helpful and needed in certain situations. And I am so grateful for that external support system. But at the same time, I'm also extremely grateful that I've basically figured out how to be my own best friend. Because at that point, loneliness is impossible. Like, you can't ever be alone because you're always with yourself. And I feel like it's been in my journal where that relationship of seeing that like you're not alone, you're with yourself, transforms loneliness into solitude.